What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. And guys, we are one sleep away from New York Giants football. It might just be preseason football, but it's Giants football nonetheless. The Giants taking on the Detroit Lions tomorrow, Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm so ready. Giants back on the field, rookies playing significant minutes, seeing what this roster and what this depth chart is going to look like. I'm very excited. Of course, as we know, throughout the preseason, that's where a lot of these depth chart discrepancies get ironed out. We figure out who's RB2, who's slot cornerback 1, who's free safety, starting and backup, and all of that fun stuff all gets ironed out during the preseason. This is where it really begins. So tomorrow, very excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. And like I said, keeping a close eye on those young players, those rookies who could be playing large roles for the Giants this year, including 3 of which might be starters on this team this upcoming season. We're going to go ahead and dive into the 3 starting rookies for the upcoming campaign and kind of give you guys our expectations and takeaways that we have from these kids throughout the preseason and training camp so far. So before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And let's go ahead and dive right into the first rookie that you want to discuss who's going to be a starter for the New York Giants this season.
Well, I think the one that we all know and is the obvious is Malik Nabers. He was born to be a starter in this league, and he was drafted to be an impact player on this offense. And listen, I think that he's going to, what Saquon Barkley left behind, the production that we have to fill, Nabers is going to do that and then some. Because when you have a star receiver like this, the impact can be tenfold, right? If you're running back and you're a superstar running back and your offense is lacking and they don't have proper receiving talent and, you know, the offensive line is spotty, what happens? Well, opposing defense say, we don't actually trust your receivers to beat us, and you don't have enough time in the pocket to actually throw the ball effectively, so we're just going to stack the box and play man coverage. And teams did that to the Giants, and they destroyed us doing it for a long time. But now you have a different kind of element in this defense, or rather this offense, and Nabers, who commands substantial attention. And Saquon commanded attention, but this is a different type of attention. If you have a free safety, their eyes are locked in on Nabers because he can burn you down the boundary. He can do stuff across the middle of the field. He can take a slant to the house. But then you got Jalen Hyde on the other side and Darius Slayton and Wandale, who now you have safeties out of position. You have strong safeties out of position. You have cornerbacks in zone coverage that are watching these guys crisscrossing and matching at elite speed. It's hard to keep up with. It's hard to transition. It's hard to move off of your assignment. In the kind of the heat of battle, you're trying to give Nabers off to the next guy. That's not working very well. We saw what he did to the Lions yesterday, and he cooked them alive. He dropped 1 pass on 18 targets, and the pass was not really a good one. It was behind him. It was out of his reach. He had a defender in his face, and he still almost came up with it. Everything else was absolutely perfect. Good throws from Daniel Jones, catchable balls. He made so many nice plays. And, you know, looking at Nabers in this offense, what he's going to do for us, we haven't seen since Odell Beckham Jr. Now, hopefully the antics are left aside and he's, you know, has a good head on his shoulders and he's able to keep things under wraps. And I think he'll be fine in that regard. And obviously got a little heated yesterday during the fight and whatnot, but learning moment for a guy that just became eligible to drink beer in the U.S. So he's 21 years old. This is a kid. You know what I mean? This is a literal kid. He's not developed mentally or physically just yet. So, you know, this is kind of a situation where he's going to grow along with this team. He's going to grow along with his experience, and DBs are going to try to get under his skin. This is the NFL, man. Any way that a guy can get a competitive advantage against you, they are going to do it. If they, you know, little pushes when the ref isn't looking, some trash talk, just can't react, right? You have to be obviously very, very disciplined and just shrug it off. Go let your play do the talking. I think Nabers is going to do more than enough to let his play do the talking. So, you know, looking at the impact that he has, Anthony, and really what he can do to help everybody else succeed, you can't let him run 1v1. You can't man cover Malik Nabers. You need to have deep safety help over top. You got to be playing, you know, if you're playing zone, you need to have a guy dropping deep into the middle of the field, or rather deep into the you know, deeper portions of the field to cover those deep concepts. But then you need those other corners dropping into intermediate ranges and shorter ranges to cover up those concepts. What he can do, it's special. You know, what do you foresee Nabers and the impact he has, not just for himself and what he can do for Daniel Jones, but what he can do for everybody around him?
Yeah, Malik Nabers is going to have a massive impact on this offense. It's going to change the way that the Giants play football this year, fundamentally. Like, in terms of how they're going to run the ball, in terms of how they're going to throw the ball, Malik Nabers is going to impact that in every single way. Because when you have a player like that on the outside, or even on the inside, it doesn't matter. A player like that who just commands double teams and attention, obviously, when you double team one player, you have to one-on-one another player. You're taking somebody out of the equation and applying them both to Malik Nabers, and for what it's worth, Malik Nabers can beat double teams. He can score and make receptions, pick up yardage against double teams, but at the same time, he can also open up one-on-one opportunities for other players like Wan'Dale Robinson, like Jalen Hyatt, like Darius Slay, and Isaiah Hodgins, even if he ends up making this roster. So you can look all over this team and see what Malik Nabers' impact is going to be. For example, if he's running a deep post and there's a safety in the middle of the field, that safety is going to have to gain a lot of deep ground to make sure that Nabers doesn't beat him over top. Well, what does that do? Okay, on those sidelines, those deep sidelines, now the safety is pulled out of the equation. Boom, you've got Jalen Hyatt or Wan'Dale Robinson one-on-one open elsewhere. So we all know that Malik Nabers is going to command attention. We know that that's going to create other opportunities in the passing game for New York Giants receivers. But I also think that what it does in the run game is very important to highlight, because when you have a receiver who commands that much attention, you're going to face a lot of nickel and dime package defenses. So you're going to get extra defensive backs on the field, which then creates an advantage for your rushing attack. Teams are not going to stack the box against the New York Giants this season. For the past 5 years, we faced a lot of loaded 7-8-man boxes because everybody knew Saquon Barkley was the focal point of the offense and was going to get a ton of carries all throughout the game. But now that Saquon Barkley isn't here and it's Malik Nabers as the focal point of the offense, you're facing more defensive backs than linebackers. So therefore, Devin Singletary, Tyrone Tracy, Dante Miller, Eric Gray, whoever's taking the handoffs or getting the work out of the backfield, they're going to have an easier time. They're going to have less linebackers that they have to face off against. For a guy like Tyrone Tracy in particular, Alex, I think this is going to have a big impact because he's one of those explosive tackle-breaking rushers where if you're facing a dime package defense, say, and there's 6 cornerbacks and safeties on the field, just defensive backs all over the place. This kid had 46 missed tackles last season. When he's facing a dime package defense and he gets the ball in his hands, all those cornerbacks, he's just going to bounce right off of them. And actually, that goes double for Malik Nabers because Malik Nabers was one of the best tackle breaking and yards after the catch receivers in the NFL or in the NCAA last season. So all of that being said, the Giants are going to face different defenses this year, and they're going to face defenses that are far more approachable from a rushing standpoint because they don't have to worry about 4-4 defenses and loaded up boxes with a ton of linebackers. They're going to be able to pick apart secondaries and run all over weaker, smaller lineups defensively. So Malik Nabers is just going to transform the way that the Giants play offense. He's going to transform the opposition and the way that they play against the Giants. So it's going to be a lot of fun. He's going to create opportunities for himself. He's going to allow Daniel Jones to be more comfortable throwing the football. And he's also going to allow Brian Dable to call a more fluid offense that can balance between the run game and the passing game seamlessly. And I think that's going to be huge. So can't wait to see Malik Nabers. I'm hoping that we see him tomorrow night. I don't know if we will. Probably not. Honestly, if it were me, I'm throwing that man in bubble wrap and saving him for September 8th. I'm not risking an injury to Malik Nabers. So I don't think we see him tomorrow night. Maybe we see him at some point in the preseason. We probably shouldn't. And this is coming from me, a huge proponent of playing starters in the preseason. I think it's necessary. But Malik Nabers, on the other hand, man, I think he's already expressed or really emphasized how important he is to this team throughout the training camp period. And I don't think there's any point in risking him during the preseason in these exhibition games. So for this young rookie who's this talented, sure, we'd like to get him acclimated and adjusted to the NFL game, but I don't think he needs that much acclimation, guys. He looks pretty ready to go, so I'm saving him for week 1. But Alex, number 2, let's go ahead and dive into the second starter for the Giants. That is a rookie. It's Andrew Phillips. Give me your take on him, why you're excited about him, and I think that's a player who does play tomorrow night. What are your expectations for him in the preseason?
Well, this secondary, all of them should be playing, aside from maybe Deonte Banks. They all need experience, reps. They need this action. I know the joint practices gave them a lot, but there's a position battle going on there. We don't know if Cordell Flott is a starter. We don't know if Nick McLeod is a starter. I think Andrew Phillips actually is probably the most bona fide starter after Deonte Banks, simply because the Giants don't have that many other options. There's Darnay Holmes, and he's been moved to the outside as well. So they don't really have any other slot options. They drafted Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky to be a starting nickel corner, and he's got the physicality, he has the presence, he's got the numbers. I mean, he was a little inconsistent with Kentucky, but again, he was on the outside, wasn't playing nickel. He put up some really, really good reps against Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know he got reamed out at one point yesterday, but learning moments. Jerome Henderson, really, really good DB coach, and look, Jerome Henderson's kind of been put under the gun right now because it's like they gave him so many young pieces. He doesn't have that much veteran experience in that room. It's really actually unfortunate on his case because the upside of this unit is certainly limited because of that. That lack of experience is a major factor when it comes to these guys are not used to playing against elite talent or like really quality receivers. Nabers is cooking them in practice, and he's an amazing receiver, but that's what they're going to have to face against. When you play the Eagles, you got AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, or you play the Cowboys, you got CeeDee Lamb moving around the football field, or the Dolphins and Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, and so there's so many good receivers in today's NFL. Or what if it's Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp? You have to have a couple of good corners, and the Giants, I think they have some good talent, but they're very inexperienced, and that is going to show up on tape. It is going to show up early in the year. They got to stay healthy, got to keep compounding good days. It could lead to them signing a veteran free agent at some point, but for now, I think, as you've mentioned in the past, give them as many reps as possible, let them play in preseason. Tomorrow night, I think that we should be seeing the majority, aside from Banks, the majority of these guys should be playing because they need the reps desperately. Injury happens in the NFL. You can't play scared. These guys need it more than any other position, in my opinion. I think that you probably agree with that. But for now, Phillips certainly leading the path to be that starting slot corner. I think he's a really solid, good, intelligent young player. The upside is substantial. I'm excited to see how much he can grow in his rookie campaign.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you. I want to see the secondary play throughout the preseason. And before I dive in and give my take on this young secondary and my expectations for them for the preseason, I want to stop real quick and give you guys a quick message from our sponsor for today, BetUS Sportsbook. If you're into sports betting, BetUS offers the fastest payouts in the industry, and their deposit and withdrawal process super easy and fast. They're giving a massive 125% sign-up bonus to $2,000 on your first 3 deposits. Live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety, and hey, they even offer 10% back on your net losses twice a year. Plus, you'll get 24/7 personalized service 365 days a year, and with BetUS, you can have your very own personal account manager. Ready to start? Check out our special BetUS link in the description below to go ahead and get started. But transitioning back into this secondary as Alex fans the money and makes it rain, talking about Andrew Phillips, I really love all the points that you made there and everything that you said about him. Listen, this kid out of Kentucky, he's scrappy. He's one of those guys who's not afraid of a challenge. We saw that on full display during those joint practices, going up against Amon-Ra St. Brown and really just whooping him on a few of those reps, which is shocking to say because Amon-Ra St. Brown, arguably the best slot receiver in the NFL. So do we see him tomorrow? I think we do because of all the points that you made. The average age for this Giants secondary, the starters that is, 22.8 years old. That's crazy. This is such a young football team and an inexperienced football team. The most established starter in this Giants secondary is Jason Pinnock, and he's only had 1 season as a starter. And he's made, 20 total starts in his career? Not many. So we're talking about a secondary that has a lot of room for growth, has a lot of room for improvement as well, and a few position battles. Because not only are we talking about CB2 with Nick McLeod and, of course, Cordell Flott, but also free safety. And we didn't list this as one of our 3 players, rookies, who we think is going to start this year, but Tyler Nubin could end up being the 4th, right? Because Dane Belton, obviously Shane Bones said it's his job to lose, the starting free safety job. He's taken over that role because Tyler Nubin was injured at the start of camp. But if those guys compete during the preseason, let's say Tyler Nubin ends the preseason with 2 interceptions, Alex, he's probably the starting free safety week 1, and we're talking about 4 rookies in the starting 22 for the New York Giants. So it's very interesting to see just how much inexperience and youth is being planted in the secondary, how this team is really relying on kind of a boom or bust strategy in the defensive backfield. So not only am I keeping a close eye on Andrew Phillips and seeing how he acclimates to the preseason, but also Dane Belton, 30-year safety, former 4th-round pick versus 2nd-round pick Tyler Nubin, who's a rookie. who ends up taking the starting job there is also going to be really interesting. So, Alex, before we dive into that third official player on our list, I know that we have a little bit of a debate to go through there, but I do kind of want to get your take real quickly on Tyler Nubin, your expectations for him in the preseason, and whether or not you think he can overtake the starting job from Dane Belton.
I mean, look, if Tyler Nubin's listed as a backup right now, he should absolutely be playing in the preseason, right? Like, all the backups should be. The experience is essential, competitive nature essential. He's also got to make up time. He missed like 7 days of training camp. So, you know, you can kind of equate one preseason game as like a week of training camp. You get a lot of experience, live action under your belt, and I think that's really important for a guy like Tyler Nubin, who's great ball hawk, great instincts, good tackler, good frame. I think he could be a really good NFL player, but right now Dane Belton has that job because he has experience under his belt, and that's really the difference between those two guys at the moment. I think Dane Belton is okay. He's a good player, maybe an average player. A lot left to be desired, I would say. But, you know, maybe he can elevate his game and become that, you know, key component, that actual cemented starter, which would be great. That would be a best case scenario for the Giants because that means they have a couple really good young safeties at their disposal. So Nubin should be playing during preseason ball. I think he should be active tomorrow. He missed a lot of training camp, so this is an opportunity to make up that time. But yeah, for the most part, I think that, you know, I'm fine with Belton not playing that much. I'm more so want to see Tyler Nubin playing a lot. And I think Jason Pinnock, he's a veteran at this point. I think, you know, 2 years of starting experience under his belt. Maybe he gets a couple snaps in the preseason game after this one, the second one. I think there's only 2 this year. So, you know, kind of majority of the starters get a quarter of action in the second game, but this game really should be for the backups, the rookies, the youngsters. By the way, back to Malik Nabers for a second. Do not let him touch the football field. That dude is ready to play in the NFL regular season game. He does not need preseason. This is not a guy fighting for a roster spot. This is a guy cooking everyone in his sight, whether it be the Giants secondary or the Lions Super Bowl contending secondary. So we don't need to see more of him and risk him getting hurt. I think we're good on that, especially because, you know, during these preseason games, these guys are going hard, man. Like there's a lot of late hits, a lot of stupid decisions, a lot of bad discipline. You don't want him being caught in a situation where he takes a late hit because some young kid's trying to prove a point. So I think that's kind of my perspective.
I'll make that point, actually. I remember preseason, I want to say it was 2017, Odell Beckham Jr. goes out there and plays against the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns had a few young guys in that secondary that were really fighting hard for a roster spot. One of them took a cheap shot down low, twisted the ankle of OBJ, and he wasn't ready. Like, he was ready to play, and he played at the start of that season, but he wasn't himself week 1, and then he ended up re-injuring that ankle, breaking his leg a few weeks later, and I think week 5 of that season. So it was almost a foreshadowing there, and I didn't like that. So I'm with you, man. Star receiver is going to transform this offense, be given the keys to the playmaking. Nah, let's bubble wrap Malik Nabers. I don't need to see him out there. I think he's ready. Maybe in the final preseason game, the Giants will put all the starters out there for a drive like they did last year against the Panthers. And sure, I'll take a drive of Malik Nabers, but for the most part, I'd rather watch Jalen Hyatt and some of those other receivers play in the preseason because those are the guys that I think really need the development. But someone else on the offensive side of the ball, Alex, who I think we're going to see a lot of in the preseason, who I think could be competing for the starting job, and in your mind probably has the starting job, but in my mind, not so much. I don't think Theo Johnson is opening up the season as the first-string tight end. I think that's going to be Daniel Bellinger. And I get it, Bellinger has not really stood out this summer. Hasn't really made a ton of plays, hasn't solidified himself as tight end 1. But for me, I think that while it is an unofficial depth chart, there's something to be said about tight end 4 for Theo Johnson. Not 3, not 2, 4. He was coming off of that injury. I know he's been playing well, but for him to be the week 1 starter, I'm not sure. But by the end of the season, I'm probably with you. I think Theo Johnson will be the starter, but I know that you're really excited about Theo Johnson. You see a lot of potential with this kid. Obviously, he's been making some plays this summer. What do you need to see from him during preseason to tell you, okay, yes, I am willing to go with this kid over Daniel Bellinger as the Giants starting tight end by the time week 1 rolls around?
Well, the reason I think Theo Johnson could be starting is because they have to replace the receiving production that Darren Waller leaves behind. Of course, Nabers does do a pretty damn good job of doing that. But I think that we've seen Daniel Jones really like throwing to his tight ends in the past, like really enjoy capitalizing on tight ends. Obviously Evan Ingram a couple years back, he got tons of targets. Theo Johnson's a very unique individual. You don't find 6'6", 260-pound tight ends very often. The guys that run 4.57 40s, physical, fast, aggressive, great catch radius, and he's a dog. Like, he's a guy that's going to make some plays for you in the passing game. And I've seen Daniel Jones connect with him routinely during training camp and, of course, during the joint practices. So I think this is going to become a very, very early chemistry that we're seeing to build right now. I think it's going to progress really quickly, and I think that right now you're going to see on more running plays, Bellinger's out there. On more passing plays, you're going to see Theo Johnson out there. I wouldn't be surprised if they got him into some jumbo slot situations too. Like if you stacked him and Wandale, think about the different route concepts you could develop there. Him attacking the seams in Wandale, little shallow crossing routes or slants, even bubble screens with a blocker like Theo Johnson out in front. Like there's so many different variations of how you could deploy these guys. But Theo Johnson's size gives him a substantial advantage over slot corners and linebackers, right? His speed, not many linebackers matching up with that, especially because as a receiver, you have an inherent advantage because defensive backs don't know what you're going to do. They don't know the routes you're running. So I think that Theo Johnson does have a lot of opportunity, especially in an offense with Brian Daboll that is focused on explosiveness. You saw what guys like Dawson Knox did in the past. Kind of those tight ends with the Buffalo Bills. They were really, really, really solid for them and really good security blankets. I think Theo Johnson is a special talent in that the Giants loved him, man. Like they really loved him. They were like, this is a prototypical tight end. This is a guy that with some development could be one of the best tight ends in football. And Brian Daboll's had many conversations with him about this. Look, we've talked about Andrew Phillips being a starter at the nickel spot, and he's a good player, like a solid young player. We don't know what it'll be just yet, obviously, but he has a lot of potential. I think Theo Johnson, they thought highly, even more highly, but they thought they could get him in the 4th round. So I think that they do view him as an impact piece immediately. And whether it be on day 1 or week 7, I think that at some point this season, he's going to be getting the majority of tight end snaps here. I like Daniel Bellinger, good, solid player. I think he'll be a nice backup. Or a guy that you can even deploy 2 tight end sets. You can put Theo Johnson in the slot and have Bellinger in line. You could do stuff like that as well to get a little bit more creative. But I do think that in terms of receiving, if the Giants are going in a more pass-heavy offense, Theo Johnson is by far the biggest asset in that regard.
Yeah, and one point that you made there that I kind of want to touch on, 2 tight end sets, right? The Giants, will they play a lot of 12 personnel this year? I honestly don't think they will. They have too much wide receiver talent to rely on 2 tight end sets in my eyes. Like, when you've got an offense that features Malik Nabers, and hopefully he ends up being the player that we expect him to be, but you've also got a young budding talent in Jalen Hyatt, who's also going to play on the outside, and you have Wandale Robinson, who you want in the slot. There's 11 personnel. And you've also got Darius Slayton, and you want to work him on the field, so they could end up going 5 wide on some snaps, right? Like, they might not even need an inline tight end on some of these plays unless they need somebody to chip for their pass protection purposes. But I just don't think there's a lot of playing time to be handed out to 2 tight ends this season. And that's surprising because in years past, we've seen a lot of 12 personnel under Brian Daboll. We've seen a lot of 12 personnel for the Giants in general just because the offensive line has been so bad. So Daniel Bellinger has been out on the field basically playing as a 6th offensive lineman. I don't want to see him do that anymore, though. I want to see him actually play the tight end position, go out there and catch some balls and get open in the intermediate portions of the field, because I think he's a pretty good player. And then I also think you can mix in Theo Johnson up the seam on those vertical concepts and use him as more of a receiving tight end down the field than in the underneath portions. So I see a lot of potential for both of these tight ends. Bellinger, maybe not with that sky-high upward talent like top 10 in the league like the Giants feel that Theo Johnson could be, but Bellinger can be a very solid, capable starter for the Giants. And then Theo Johnson, like you said, the potential is there for him to be pretty special. So I think those guys are going to get their reps. They're going to get on the field quite a bit. But in terms of playing a lot of 12 personnel this season, I just don't really see it happening. I think the Giants are going to want to get their receivers on the field as much as possible and sit in a lot of 11 personnel packages. 3 receivers, 1 tight end, 1 running back. That's got to be the way that the Giants move forward this year. And obviously that puts a lot more pressure on a guy like Daniel Jones to share the football with his outside receivers, push the ball towards the sidelines, and really attack the field. You don't have as much security with those safety blankets underneath in the tight ends when you're running 11 personnel. But hey, man, I think that's what the Giants need to do. They need to say, hey, Daniel Jones, we're going to run you out there in 11 personnel with these receivers, and you better go out there and make some plays. Otherwise, we're going to have to make some decisions in the offseason. That's kind of where we're at with Daniel Jones. That's where the Giants have made it clear that they're at. We saw all of that on Hard Knocks. So I think it's going to be an interesting season for the Giants, and especially for this offense, as they try to work in some of these young players and rookies into the mix and see where this team goes, because the potential is definitely there. Like I said, a very young football team, but how far will they go? I think that's going to rely on Daniel Jones, on Brian Dable, and a few other key contributing factors. But it's a boomer bust team with so much youth, especially in the secondary and on the offensive side of the ball. It's definitely going to be exciting to watch, and that's why I think this is going to be one of the more pivotal preseasons for the Giants that we've seen in recent years. Alex, the last thing that I kind of want to touch on, just more so preseason preview, since the game is tomorrow, and of course we'll probably hit you guys with an upload tomorrow and discuss some more of these storylines to preview, but last thing that I want to touch on, obviously we've talked a lot about the youth that we're going to see in this preseason game tomorrow. We're also going to see Brian Dable calling plays. I think that's a huge factor in terms of some of the conversations that we were just having about maybe if Nabers plays, definitely when we see Theo Johnson on the field, and just this offense in general. It might look a lot different tomorrow with Brian Dable calling plays. What are you looking forward to there?
Tyrone Tracy. I want to see Tyrone Tracy so freaking bad. That's one of the guys I really want to see. That running back position is like, Devin Singletary is good. We know what he is. There's some guys here, Turbo, Miller. Like, there's some guys here, some dogs here that we want to see. Behind the receiver core, it's like, you have Hodgins, you have Hyatt. Like, I don't know I think Hyatt will probably get some reps. I think Hodgins will definitely get some reps. But behind them, you have like Isaiah McKenzie, Gunnar Olszewski, like some kick returners. We'll be seeing some action there. Deontay Johnson, linebacker, behind Micah McFadden. Interesting player there. Want to see him. I want to see some Jordan Riley, defensive tackle. DJ Davidson and Ryder Anderson. Those are some guys I want to see. Really, the secondary in general across the board, need to see more from them. Guys like Javarius Owens, like to see some stuff from him. Azeez Ojulari, maybe we'll get some work as a third pass rusher there. Maybe he'll start. We'll see. Boogie Basham, we got carted off the field, but I think it was just dehydration, heat related. So far so good on the health front. Knock on wood. Offensive line, need to see stuff there. Need to see some stuff there. We'll see probably some Aaron Stinney. We'll see some Schlotterman. We'll see some Marcus McKethin, some Josh Azidu. We're gonna see a whole bunch of guys in those trenches. So very much we'll be keyed in on those. But guys, as always, if you follow us on social media, we'll be posting all the highlights clips. We'll do a full recap afterward, breaking down what we saw, what we liked, what we didn't like, and obviously, gearing up towards the regular season here. It's going to be exciting. Hopefully, we can go on a positive note and see some nice development from some of these young players and developmental projects.
Hopefully. Should be an exciting first preseason game tonight on the channel, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can catch me with two of our recurring co-hosts, Will Cohen and Allie. We're going to be breaking down all the top storylines heading into tomorrow's preseason game. Super excited to do that and excited to chat with you guys in the live stream, and really just excited for Giants football to be back. It's going to be a lot of fun. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, catch you all on the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.